Welcome to RISE seminar series. Today we have Ruben Portas, who is a wildlife researcher who has worked over 15 years in large carnivores and birds. Ruben holds a Bachelor of Science in Nature Conservation and uh, Masters of is that Masters by Research? I think so.
Yes,
By
that's
the
correct.
Namibia University of Science and Technology. He is based in Namibia since 2013, where he works for the IZW Cheetah Research Project of the Leibniz Institute for Zoo and Wildlife Research of Berlin and the University of Ljubljana,
Ljubljana.
Slovenia. He has carried out the Namibian Cheetah Survey between 2015 and 2020. The Inter-MAC project focused on interactions among felids and the Gaia project in Etosha National Park. He is currently working in Namibia Desert, focusing his research on adaptation and ecological roles of cheetah in the arid environment. So Ruben today will present his talk will be titled Applied Research Provides Solution to Coexist with Cheetah and Leopard in Namibia. And I met with Ruben last year when I went to a conference in Namibia, and I was so impressed by his talk. And since then we were chatting, and then I thought it would be nice for him to give a talk at our RISE seminar. This will be the first time to hear about research which is done outside Tanzania. So Ruben, your research is kind of like opening a door for us to kind of go international. So it's a great pleasure to welcome you to give this talk at RISE, a facility which is under Grumeti Fund in Northern Serengeti, in Western Serengeti in Tanzania. So the floor is yours. Please welcome.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much for this privilege. It's a really great privilege, especially the first international talk. This is very nice. And yes, I hope you like it and is of your interest. So I will start. I will talk mostly about the work we've been doing with cheetahs and then afterwards with leopards and how collecting firstly basic data on wildlife species, basic biological data, and then apply this data can actually really open many other doors for us to understand animals and conserve them. So any data can actually provide much more than we expect at the beginning. Okay, so a quick overview on the cheetah distribution and population size. We have more or less 7,100 cheetahs left in the world. This is an estimate done by Durant in 2017. In gray is where cheetahs used to live. So cheetahs are currently confined only to 9% of the historical distribution. The stronghold of cheetahs is currently based in Namibia, Botswana, is where we expect more cheetahs to be. And there they live on farmland, most of the cheetahs, which is contrary to all the other parts of the world where cheetahs live mostly in protected areas. Okay, then the second biggest population is a complex of Masai Mara, Serengeti, as you guys know, and then we have some other populations spread across the African country and even in Iran, where we have between 30 and 90 cheetahs left. Cheetahs used to be all the way up to India and most of the African continent. We estimate more or less 1,500 cheetahs in Namibia. All of these are guess estimates. This is the distribution in Namibia. So every dark square is where we confirm the species to be present. Every green colored is where we expect the species to be, so we do not have evidence. And then in yellow is where we would expect the species not to be present, although you can see some of the spots contradicting. So this is the best map available for now. So everybody knows about cheetahs. Like almost anywhere in the world, you can ask if somebody knows what a cheetah is, and they will tell you, yeah, it's the fastest animal in the planet, and they live in these high savannas of the Serengeti, and they like these termite mounts. So despite that being a quite well-known popular species, we actually have very little knowledge on it, and especially on density estimates, on population density. All of these numbers that you saw now here are numbers that I guess estimates that are our best knowledge, but there's very little studies done directly in the field to collect data directly in the field to actually have a good baseline. Okay. So when we start working in Namibia, we settle ourselves in farmland, living among farmers, living on the farms, and trying to understand cheetahs together with the farmers to be part of the community. And we ask the farmers, what would you like to know about cheetahs? And the farmers told us, yes, we want to know where do they go, how they move through the landscape, what do they eat, and how much livestock do we actually lose to them. So okay, so let's work together. We try to put some GPS collars on these cheetahs and see how they move through the landscape. And when we start coloring together with the farmers, capturing cheetahs on the farms, we fit the GPS collars, and we saw this, that the territorial males, what you have in the picture with the tail lifted marking against this tree, have very straightforward movement between these green dots that you see. They constantly patrolling these green dots. And when you went to the field to check what these green dots could be, what we found are marking sites. You obviously are more familiar with the termite mounds. It's what I hear is more abundant there in the Serengeti, and also trees. But in the desert areas, we also have rocks that the cheetahs go, climb, defecate, scratch against the trees, and pee to constantly mark their territory. So this is what they do, and these are areas visited by all the cheetahs where they obtain the information that they want. So they leave the tail, like you see this individual marking. There are two brothers now coming, marking against the lower branch, defecating, and leaving information to the other individuals, to the females, to tell them, we are the big guys, we own this territory, we will be ready to mate, and to the other guys, hey guys, this is our area, leave, bugger off, we are defending it. And then young individuals would come, or single individuals without territory, they would come and smell it to know if this territory is occupied. So these are the locations where cheetahs communicate with each other to know who is around and what intentions they have. You see, they always like to mark against the same corners of the trees. A breakthrough of the project was to actually understand cheetah spatial ecology. And as you see here, these three territories are spaced away from each other. They're not bordering with each other, and there's gaps more or less almost mathematically 23 kilometers, okay, from each other. This contrasts quite a bit with territories of other large carnivores. For example, leopards, you see that in blue is a male, in red there is a male, and then the females are within the male territories and all bordering with each other. However, cheetah males, they were separated, they were not bordering with each other, and this was sorry, I hear a lot of noise in back. And this was quite striking for us. When we look into depth and we have more long-term data, we found out that these territories are constant in space and in time. So when a cheetah dies, or a farmer kills it, or a new cheetah takes over and he gets kicked away, the new animal that takes over the place, or the coalition of males, would use almost the same territory. So these areas are constant in space and time, and which means also that the trees that you saw, the termite mounds, would be used by generations and generations of cheetahs. Then we come to the floater males. So floater males are not only single individuals, but can be coalitions of younger males. So in fact, they are cheetahs looking for territory where to settle, and they keep patrolling between these territories, looking for an area where they can challenge the territory owner, so area that is vacant, and they can settle in. So you can see here how they travel between these hotspots, 23 kilometers from each other. They go, they smell the trees and try to find information. Who is there? Can we take over the place? What this creates is areas in the landscape with a lot of cheetah activity and areas in the landscape with less cheetah activity, because they all are not contiguous to each other. So if you talk to some of these farmers living in these red dots, they will tell you there are a lot of cheetahs on their farm. But if you talk to the neighbors, more the greener areas, they would say, we barely see cheetahs on our farm. They just pass through, but they don't really spend much time here. And these are really, really important and interesting applications. So now when we start looking into the females, we found out that, okay, these areas between male territories, they're actually occupied by the females. It's not that there's no cheetahs there. The females have much wider home ranges, as you can see on the top left, covering several male territories. And on the bottom left, you see the blue colors are territorial males, and the other colors are females living between the males. Okay, now the main picture on the right hand side, you see a female traveling around with the cubs. With the green dots, with the yellow dots is when she has the cubs. And then when the cubs are old enough, between 14, 16, up to even 18 months, the cubs separate from the mother, and the mother goes almost on a straight line to this green area that I show there, which is this male territory. So she hangs around there, she starts spraying against the trees to let know the territorial male that she's ready to mate. And then she leaves, she gives birth to the cubs away from these territories, and the cycle starts over. So what this helps us to understand how cheetahs move through the landscape. For example, we can apply this information for the human-wildlife conflict. Okay, we know that there are areas visited by a lot of cheetahs and areas where barely cheetahs. And we have a conflict in Namibia, in Botswana, in other parts of the world where cheetahs live with livestock, where cheetahs kill livestock, and farmers also kill cheetahs, and actually some farmers kill a lot of cheetahs. And we wanted to solve this. We had farmers approaching us. Look, we've killed cheetahs for many years on our farm. I killed cheetahs. My father has done it. My grandfather has done it. We've never solved our losses. We barely ever reduce them. And we actually do not want to keep killing these animals, but we want to reduce our losses. And you want to help both cheetahs and farmers. So, okay, let's try to do some research on the farm, put some collars, and understand how cheetahs move through your farm. And we found out that most of these farmers were keeping the livestock in the center of these territories, in the core areas, where all the cheetahs are visiting these trees and these thermal mounts. So we suggested to these farmers, why don't you move this livestock away from these core areas, only the calves when they are 6 months up to 6 months old, because the calves during the first 6 months of their life is when they are more vulnerable. After 6 months, they are big enough, cheetahs will not attack them, you can bring them back to the area. And this reduces the losses by almost 86%. Experiment done over 10 years. So it was a great success. And from having farmers that used to kill cheetahs to have farmers who actually release cheetahs back on their farm and even use these pictures that you see there for the social media, for the Facebook and WhatsApp, to be able to convince and attract the more difficult farmers, those who do not believe in scientific approaches, was a great success that allowed us to work on more and more farms. And we did not only manage to reduce the livestock losses from cheetahs, but we also reduced the number of cheetahs killed over the years. So we have both cheetahs and farmers to solve this conflict. And we're currently busy with expanding this to other parts, not only throughout Namibia, but over the whole African range and even Iran. So we're currently looking for partners, looking for GPS data, looking for information on of these territories, like marking trees. You could know, for example, in your reserve, termite mounts and hopefully collared cheetahs, to understand if these communication hubs occur away from Namibia and other parts of the continent. And we already found out evidence that working with other researchers, that these communication hubs, these territories spaced away from each other, are actually quite common to the whole continent. So if you're aware of any thing like this in Grumeti and in the Serengeti, it would be really important data to contribute with. Okay, so if you at the beginning of the talk would see this amount of lines, would be quite difficult to understand what's going on here. But now with this knowledge, you can identify this blue floater visiting three of these territories. You can see also the purple one visiting territories. The green one is mostly a territorial male on the left side. And if you zoom in, you will see all of these stars, which represent trees and termite mounts. So this information, how cheetahs move through the landscape, can have also many other applications to study them. One of the applications is how to count cheetahs. So the main approach to count cheetahs is, and other carnivores, is approach done all over the world, is to set a grid across a landscape where we deploy camera traps at certain distance, can be 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 kilometers away from each other. And you target areas where you would expect cheetahs, leopards, jaguars, tigers to walk through, and we would get pictures of these individuals and from each side, which allow us to identify them individually. However, if the cheetah or the leopard does not walk in the area we intend, did not pass there within the 2 or 3 months we have the camera trap set, we will miss it, right? So it is a common approach, but we are missing animals. So it really depends on how good we are at selecting the locations to deploy the camera traps. But with cheetahs now, we have a place that we know that sooner or later all will visit. And these are, again, the marking sites. A territorial male would mark against this tree, will come regularly to mark against it, but we will have also floaters coming, smelling, checking if this territory is occupied or not. And what you see here is a real case scenario. All of these cheetahs came, visited this tree on his farm over a period of 3 months. The farmer was quite surprised that so many cheetahs come in and out living on his farm. Okay, so with this method, we develop a new approach to count cheetahs in a more accurate way possible. And this is what I did between 2015 and 2020. I tried to cover most of the area in Namibia where the cheetahs are present with the highest densities, and I target areas with lions, without lions, with hyenas, without hyenas, areas with humans and livestock, and areas without humans and livestock. So protected areas, commercial farmland, communal farmland, areas with more and less rainfall, desert, highland, savanna, targeting all the different biomes, trying to understand why it drives cheetah numbers across the country. Okay, and what I did is mostly approaching farmers, rangers, anybody who lives in the field who potentially could know about cheetahs, have seen cheetahs, and trying to find these marking sites, these termite mounds, but mostly trees. And these trees where you find the cheetah droppings on top, which I really call black gold, because for us was extremely important information. And when some of them know, yes, we call them play trees, and I saw cheetahs there several times, even climbing them, and they pee against them. I've got some on my farm, and this was really a great start of a project in each one of these study areas. So I would immediately go there, I would deploy cages and try to capture these cheetahs. And now we have these cage traps that we develop ourselves, what I call a great piece of African technology, which are really practical and simple and efficient. Okay, so these cage straps have got laser beams, so they don't have the typical trigger plate. So everything that is smaller than a cheetah can go in and out. We have camera traps on top, so when the cage closes, we get a picture of the cheetah. We can even see this one line there. We could even identify this individual. We get either cell phone message or cell phone call. In areas without cell phone network, we get a satellite message via email. And the cages have got solar panels and can be deployed in the field. We even try a new model with pattern recognition, and actually it does work, but it's a bit slow because cheetahs in the field are quite fast. So we using these cages. It allows me to work all over the country in areas quite separated and remote from each other. And once the cheetah is inside, I'm a paravet license, so I can dot them. I use a mix of ketamine, metomidine. I estimate the weight and the age, and I give a dosage. And after 10-15 minutes, the cheetah will be sleeping. I call the team, and then we use the stretcher that you see on the top left. We carry the cheetah and we create like a quick mobile lab in the field where we put it on the table to avoid dust. We cover the eyes. We give a drip so he gets some liquid. We take ID pictures, and then start the whole process of taking samples. We take measurements. We look at the teeth for age and health condition. We take different data. We withdraw blood, which we centrifuge then, and we even freeze it in liquid nitrogen to look for parasites and immunology studies. And then we deploy GPS collars. So now here is quite important. We select the lightest collars possible for this individual. For cheetahs, we usually use between 270 and 350 grams. Okay, these collars have drop-off system, so the collars can open, fell from the neck of the animal, and then we can retrieve the collar, change the battery, and deploy it again. And we receive the information either via satellite, or we have to do aerial tracking and collar the animal and retrieve the data from the animal. Once all of this is done, this process would last more or less 40-50 minutes. The cheetah goes back into this cage, which is then padded. So when he wakes up and is a bit dizzy, he stumbles around, doesn't hurt himself. We give the antidote and we let the cheetah go. And this is what you would see. Cheetah ready to run, fit. And back to the wild with this collar and ready to collect data and healthy. So this is great. So we do this with cheetahs. Obviously, we do not do this with leopards. Leopards would turn around and really target us. So leopards, we would put them in the shade of the tree you see there in front and let them wake up and drag themselves to a safer place where they can spend the day sleeping and recovering. Okay, so once the cheetah is out in the field, we start receiving the data from the GPS collar. We look at the movement data, and we start identifying all these marking sites. We go to the field, we deploy the cameras, one at each site, and we leave the cameras there for 2 or even 3 months collecting data. We obviously return there to change SD cards and batteries. And after 2 or 3 months, we should get ideally a picture like this, perfect picture from the side, which allow us to identify the individual. And using the software Camelot, we start adding tags on this picture like you would do on Facebook, for example. So every animal gets an ID. This one is NN04. We sex it, is a male, and is a territorial male because it's marking. So this behavior marking really is only exclusive of territorial males. We extract the GPS coordinates of the camera trap station. We extract the date. We extract the time. And we build databases like this where every row is a visitation of a cheetah into a territory. So you would see there were two different coalitions. So N04 was the single male that you saw, and N110 and 111, there were two males that were coming also marking. So they were challenging each other, constantly visiting these trees to see who would take over. At the end was N110 and 11 remained. There were two bigger males, and the one that was single had to leave. We use this and we create input files for spatial capture-recapture studies to estimate the density. So these are where the density estimates the results obtained for Namibia. So the results varied between 0.2 and almost 1 cheetah per 100 kilometers square. So these are very, very low density estimates. For example, in the Kalahari Desert, the study done by Mills, the cheetah density was estimated at 1 cheetah per 100 kilometers square. And in our area in Namibia, in the East Central farmlands, where we have permanent water, we have lots of game and a good habitat, this is the highest density we reach. So this shows that cheetahs, even in areas well preserved, with a good well preserved landscape, healthy prey population, they still need large range requirements. They need big areas to roam, and there are individuals, there are animals, there are species that they just need a lot of space. Even if the landscape is well preserved, they just need a lot of space. And this is valid for cheetahs, but also for wild dogs and for secretary birds. They're animals that just need a lot of space. And this is one of the main challenges for cheetahs because we do not have a lot of space. There are not many areas with a huge extension like the Serengeti in Masai Mara. One of the main problems we see in Namibia is the increasing of game fences. Okay, so these fences have been erected all over the country for other tourism purposes or hunting purposes or private reserves, and this really hinders the movement of cheetahs, the connectivity, and also creates landscape loss, areas where the cheetahs used to go and mark before some of these territories have disappeared because they've been fenced off. There are solutions to it. So you can make a plan to allow the cheetahs go in and out while keeping inside the rhinos and the elephants, but it's not done everywhere. So some of these farmers say, okay, what you're doing with the cheetahs is really interesting. We would like to do something here, but here our main problem is actually not cheetahs, actually leopards. We have mostly problems with leopards killing our livestock, and we would like to solve this. So we say, okay, we don't have funding, but together with the farmers, we wrote a proposal to actually study leopards, and we were lucky enough that the proposal was successful, was granted, and we got funding to start working and studying leopards together with the farmers. So we look into research questions, and we look into the diet and prey preference. What do the leopards eat? If their leopards have special prey preferences, are they specialized leopards? Some leopards are really constantly kill livestock. And we wanted to look also at the home range sizes and how leopards are distributed across the landscape. So the methodology started with capturing and collaring these free-ranging leopards. The farmers helped us baiting these cages and trying to attract the leopards inside. And we were successful enough that we managed to capture and collar 37 leopards. So 19 males and 16 females. And these individuals were, okay, the numbers are much here. It was actually 18 females. And the we were lucky enough that most of these leopards here, they were bothering with each other, connecting with each other, which allow us to study a lot of interactions and really understand how they occupy the landscape and how they interact with the conspecifics. Home ranges, they were quite small, between 20 and 90 kilometers square for females and 150 to 500 for males, which has a large variation. And what we start doing when we start receiving the data of these collars, when the leopards were moving, we identify 4 GPS data clusters. So these are clusters of GPS locations that show that the leopard was permanent or based in one small area, busy there for 1 or 2 days. So we went to the field to see what was happening, and the leopards usually this much with other resting sites, but very often with kill sites where the leopard made a kill, killed a kudu or eland or oryx, and spent there a couple of days feeding on this animal. What we did is walking in the bush, approaching this kill. I used to do this by whistling, making some sound, so the leopard would hear me approaching, would go away, and would allow me to deploy these camera traps that you see on the trees to monitor there. We would put audio mods to record any sound communication between leopards, and we would tie the prey to these trees or rocks or whatever we could do to avoid that the leopard drags it away, and we able to record what happened in there. At the beginning, I was very cautious. I was a bit afraid that leopards could jump and stalk me or injure me. And at the end, I was really trying hard, going against the wind, as silent as possible, to see a leopard close to the kill. And this only happened 3 times in a period of 2 years. So they are very, very warrior animals. So this is the footage we would get. This adult female feeding on this oryx. And the cameras will remain there to see what happens with the leftovers. So some of the results, the main diet of the leopards in Namibia was oryx, warthog, kudu, and also steenbok. We visited 480 clusters, which is quite a good sample size, and we found prey remains in 85% of them. So we had quite a good success to actually find the leopard kills when we went to the field. And good news, we actually found very little livestock. We found 9 calves and 2 horse foals killed by leopards. So when we look at the broader picture, 94% of leopard food was wild prey, 3% was domestic prey, and the other 3% is actually unknown, but very likely to be wild prey. Otherwise, we would get information from the farmer that is missing some livestock. So answering some of the questions, do leopards specialize on livestock? We actually found out that all these livestock that I showed, these 9 calves and 2 foals, were killed by 10 different leopards. There was only 1 leopard who killed cattle twice, showing that actually they did not really specialize on livestock. And some of these leopards were captured in a trap placed at the kill. So when the leopards kill the calf, the farmer say, okay, I'm going to spare the life of this leopard. We're going to study it. So we capture the leopard after killing the calf. And then we release it back with a GPS collar, which is quite a challenge for farmers to do this, because if the leopard starts preying on the livestock, he would probably regret this moment when he let it go alive. And the interesting thing is none of these leopard prey again on the livestock during the study. So this was quite a good news, showing that leopards do not specialize on livestock. Some really cool findings was when we monitor the skills over time to see who benefits from these prey remains. So here the pictures, some are at night, but on the bottom left, there are different bird species feed on it. Bottom in the middle, mongoose, then a genet, warthogs would feed on it, brown hyenas would feed on it, honey badgers, jackals, and on the top, we saw actually other leopards. Uncolored individuals, unknown individuals would come and feed on this skill. And this is something not really known for leopards, which are expected to be solitary species. And we found this quite often, prey sharing among leopards, different leopards feeding on the same kill. So we leave the camera trap, we see here this territorial male, and then we see the female here colored, and then the tail probably of the male around, and then another uncolored individual coming to the same kill, all feeding from the same prey. So this was quite interesting for us. This happened in 34% of the kill sites, so it was quite common, quite often this would happen. More common would be 2 leopards sharing on the kill, but we had cases of 3 leopards also sharing the kill. Most common was male-female interaction, which would be expected, the territorial male and territorial female sharing the food. But females share more often food with the males than males with the females, and that was quite interesting. They're not that gentlemen, these leopards. And we found some conservation implications for this. So for example, there was this calf, he was killed, and the moment this calf was killed, the closest collared leopard was several kilometers away when the calf was killed. So the collared leopard could not have killed the calf. And then this collared leopard showed up at the calf kill, and the farmer caught it in a gin trap and shot it. And we showed to the farmers that 30% of the leopards shot were actually scavenging on the livestock and not killing this livestock and prey on it. So farmers very often target these leopards to reduce livestock losses and end up killing, let's say, the wrong leopard or not the target leopard, showing that this lethal control is actually not really useful and is really not targeting the leopard that they would aim to target. And so things are much more complex than taking quick decisions and targeting leopards. And when we look at the how did it work for them to actually remove leopards to prevent livestock losses, we saw that the farms who shoot more leopards, they actually have more losses, and the farms shooting less leopards, they have less losses. And you could argue, yeah, of course, they shoot more leopards because they have more losses. But what was interesting is when we look at the calves loss next year, it's actually the farms that shoot more leopards would have more losses in the next year. Even the losses would increase and they would not decrease. And this for the farmers was counterintuitive. Why would that be? And studies done, for example, with pumas or mountain lions or cougars show that these disturbances actually create that. For example, for each additional cougar shooting, the probability of livestock depredation increased to 50 to 53% in the following year. And the explanation for this is that when you remove one of these males, one of these territorial males, you will have more young males coming in, covering the landscape and have a higher density for a while than they used to be before a single male. Okay, many of these young males are not as experienced hunters as the adult ones, so they would go for easier prey. And so disruption socially, in this case cougars, but leopards and other species, can lead actually to livestock depredations. And this means also that killing leopards might not help really to reduce your livestock losses. So if you're a farmer, we recommend several things. Sorry. One is keep the vulnerable calves away from these risky areas. So these mountains, these very densely vegetated areas with low visibility. We also recommend to especially protect livestock at night. At dusk at night is when the leopards are more active hunting. So what you see here are the activity patterns of leopards hunting. So these are moments that the calves should really keep with the herds at the kraals and keep the leopard territorial safe. Okay, so the leopards that keep the younger ones away, that keep all the other leopards away, if they don't cause you any trouble, do not target them, do not kill them. And some of these farmers actually adopted this information and say, okay, let's change our habits. Let's see what we can do. In this case, Kumuk had high leopard losses, high losses to leopards, sorry. So they used to lose an average 50 calves a year, up to 40 calves a year. So it's huge losses. And they start adopting methods. So they start using herders to protect the livestock. They use guarding dogs. They kept the livestock at night altogether, and their losses reduced dramatically to 0.7 calves lost per year. Okay, so it really contributed to reduce the livestock losses. And not only livestock losses, they did not need fences anymore because they kept moving with the livestock. So they also reduced cost in maintaining fences, and because they kept more close look on the livestock, they reduced the losses to disease, to birth-related mortality, and also to livestock theft and poaching. So was quite a good thing to change the method and really look more after your livestock, especially at night. So if the coexistence is possible, you just need to use the scientific information available. So thank you for your interest, and I hope the talk was interesting for you and not too long with too much information.
Thank you so much, Ruben. This is really very informative, and we have definitely learned a lot. So I see people are clapping hands. So for anyone who has a question, you can just like raise your hand. I already see Skylar. Skylar, oh, she's clapping. So if you have a question, you can raise your hand or just unmute yourself and ask your question. Or you can also type your question in the chat and I will just read loud to Ruben. All right. While other people are just still waiting to ask the question, I had a very quick question. We have a problem in Western Serengeti. We have some lions that are actually now attacking livestock. and in some situation also they attack humans. So do you think these cages would also work for lions? Because we are now trying to think what we can do to address that problem.
You mean to capture the lions and relocate them?
Yeah, using those cages, or like put collars on them so that we can closely monitor.
Yes. I would honestly, I would not try to capture a lion in the cage for your safety and for lion safety. We had a lion in the cage. It was quite scary. It's quite a big thing. They might destroy the cage and get out. And it's not the best thing if you're outside with a dart gun. I think lions are easier approachable. I mean, sometimes by cars, you can use calls at night to get them closer to the car and dart them. Some animals are not easy, especially if you live in more humanized areas and they're afraid of humans. Um, but cages they work, yes, but they might be not the safest though. And putting collars, it does help, yes. For example, here in Namibia with the lions, the lion rangers, they're doing quite a good job. And what they do is they provide information to the villages that live around lion areas. And they keep the livestock at night. They really make sure they create kraals in all of these villages. And next to each one of these kraals is an antenna that detects when the collar is nearby and start showing lights and sounds. So when the lions are getting closer to the village, there's lights and sounds coming up to scare the lions away. And they even give fireworks to the guys in the villages to lighten the fireworks, so create noise and sound and lights to really scare the lions away from these villages. And it's working actually really, really well. But you need obviously full-time people working full-time and quite a few lions collared, because it's also possible that a non-collared lion go to the village and end up causing trouble. So they at least deploy 1 or 2 collars per pride. And these collars, you can depend on the brands, but some brands allow you to set like a boundary. So when the lion reaches certain areas that you delimitate in the landscape, you get an alert. So that works. That could be a possibility.
All right. All right. Thank you so much. Anyone with a question? Vicky, is there anyone on site who has a question? JM, you can unmute yourself and ask.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for the presentation and a very good research. My question is, how long does the study took place? And also, the collars have been put in order to know the territorial place of the cheetah to the farmers make their livestock far from those places. If so, the cheetahs will not shift their livestock, or if okay, how can I say? Does the cheetah will keep with the collars to monitor in case they change their territorial place, and also the to avoid the livestock to go toward also those places. I don't know if you got my questions.
Yes, it's actually, I did not understand the first one, but I will answer first the second one. This is actually a very common question we got even from the farmers. You're asking, why would the cheetahs not follow the livestock when you shift the livestock away from these areas, right?
Yes.
Yes. So when you see these areas where the cheetahs use this mark inside these territories, these are areas that are more interested for them, especially for the males, because they would sooner or later all the females would only go to these areas, and that would be the only way for them to mate. So in any case, they cannot leave these areas unattended to follow the livestock. But an important thing is there must be wild prey populations in the area. Okay, so this is really important. If you don't have any game for the cheetahs to eat, if you don't have oryx in our cases, kudu, springbok, cheetahs would have to find food elsewhere. So this is why we recommend it to the farmers. Yes, it's important to have livestock on your farm because you need to make a living, but it's also important to keep your prey population healthy So the carnivores also have access to all the type of food and do not have to prey on your livestock. So they need this, obviously.
Okay, fine. Thank you. The first question is about the study duration.
The study duration.
Yeah.
Oh, this is a long-term project. So our study started in 2002, but focusing on the human-wildlife conflict when we start funding this livestock, this is even before my time. So I've been now for 12 years in Namibia, and my colleagues funding this in more or less 2016. So I was already in the project, and they found already this hotspot. But obviously, you need more and more data to actually really prove and put all the pieces of the puzzle in the landscape to understand all what's going on. So if you want to obtain research like this, you really need long-term research and being focused over time. And this is quite tricky because funding always finishes before. But we were lucky enough to just keep going slowly. Some moments better than others.
All right. Thank you so much.
All right. Our next question will be from Dr. Dennis Minja. Dennis, you can unmute yourself.
Oh, yeah. Hi. Oh, such a wonderful presentation. Thanks, Ruben. I just missed the first few minutes, but I was wondering, how far were you from the leopards? I think that's when I joined the meeting. I heard you mentioning that you are walking swiftly, closely to the leopards who were having lunch.
Yes.
So how
Yes.
close were you? And it looks very scary. And were there no incidents where they detected you or they smelled you or something exciting that made you run away quickly? Thanks.
Run away is not the solution. It definitely is not. I mean, I never had to act against leopards, but I heard you should make yourself bigger than them, which I don't know if it will be easy. So at the beginning, I was really making a lot of noise and whistling and singing and talking and sometimes clapping when I was getting closer and closer. So I would wake up in the morning, 6 in the morning, check all the data on the phone or on the laptop. Do the leopards have a kill? Yes, no. Oh, yes, they have a kill. I'll go there. So I go with the GPS. I was walking through the bush. As I get closer, I start making noise so the leopard would hear me. And then I saw, okay, I will never get to see a leopard like this. So they start being more careful and more careful. And then planning against the wind going around. And I got 3 times to like 20 and 30, 40 meters from a leopard. All these times the leopard still saw me before I saw these leopards. They saw me approaching, and I just saw the leopard hidden in an area where there was not so much vegetation. But some of these moments I was actually setting the camera traps. I was tying the kill, and when I went home and then we got the GPS position, I saw the leopards that was sometimes 50 meters away from me, just sitting probably in the bush looking what I was doing. And as soon as I left, he went there trying to drag the kill away. I never had any close encounter that I would think I was threatened. I had close encounters where the leopard looked at me and ran away from the kill. That happened these 3 times where I disturbed them. So they are much more aware of you coming than you even making any type of arrangements to see them. It just doesn't work.
Awesome. There is a question from those who are in person from the conference room. Vicky, you can facilitate that.
Yes, that's actually me. I have a question to Ruben. So I'm interested to know how many of the cheetahs you recolored, because I understand this is a long-term study and you used drop-off collars. So how many of the cheetahs did you recolor, and how were you able to target the same cheetahs?
Okay, this is a good question. The ones with the drop-off study was when I was doing the survey all over Namibia, because there were areas where I was planning to work like 4 6 months, and then when I had the data of this animal and I knew the territory and the marking trees, I did not need the collar anymore. But in the central Namibia, we had the long-term data for now 20 years. We had not drop-off collars. Some they were drop-off, and most of them they were just EOPS, like remote download, that we had to fly once a week to download the data of all these cheetahs. And some animals were recollared throughout their life. So we had cheetahs living up to 14 years, and we collar this cheetah every 2 years or every year and a half, and replacing the collar. So once you know these marking trees in the landscape, you know where to put the cages, you know where to target these cheetahs, and sooner or later, cheetahs are not the most intelligent animals when it comes to capture. So sooner or later, you will be able to recapture them and replace the collar. Some animals were quite clever, yes. Some animals we really struggled. And for example, in a coalition of, let's say, 2 males, there was always one that is trap shy and the other one trap happy. So you try to capture both. And then you see, okay, which one will be the most naive that we're able to replace the collar when we need. And because there will be another one that you go through the cage once and say, I'm not going through again. So it is not easy, but it's easier than many other animals. For leopards, for example, we really struggle. I think we recollared leopards once. Very, very difficult to recollar leopards in comparison to cheetahs.
Thank you.
Oh, there's a question from Matt Perry, who's asking whether Namibia has a compensation scheme for livestock losses.
In communal land, yes, it's not high. In communal land, yes. In commercial farmland, not.
Okay. And the next question will be coming from Skylar.
Hi, thanks so much for this presentation. It was so interesting. My question, apologies if you answered it in your presentation, but I was curious if when you started moving the cattle out of the areas that were cheetah dense, if you saw an impact also on leopard predation on the cattle.
We did not account for that, honestly. I do not know. It's possible. The area where we worked is quite flat. So the leopards were mostly busy in the mountains. The area where we had leopards, so the second leopard study was not at the same location as the first one. But some farmers told us, yeah, Ruben, my farm is only 5,000 hectares. Yeah, I cannot move. I mean, the whole farm is the cheetah territory. So I have nowhere else to bring the livestock. And all the farmers say, yeah, if I move the livestock from here, I'm bringing there where I know there's hyenas and leopards, so I will have trouble. So it is a solution for some farmers, but obviously not for all of them. But what would help them is, okay, these are the areas highly used by the cheetahs. So in these areas, and for cheetahs, it works actually quite well to have warding dogs, herders. You know, cheetahs are much more careful to not be injured, to not encounter a dog. So to know where these marking trees are and to know where you actually should pay special attention to really protect your livestock would help. So even if shifting the livestock away would not help all the farmers, it would already help them, especially to see where the trouble areas are. Like we said to the farmers, there's no problem cheetahs, but they're trouble areas.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
All right, there are 2 more questions on the chat. How does genetic diversity and relatedness influence population resilience and health among cheetahs? That's the first question from Matt Perry. And the other question is, what are the main threats to the cheetah population?
Okay, so the first question, starting, I'm not an immunologist. My former boss, she's the one running the long-term cheetah project, Bettina Warta. So you can find on ResearchGate a lot of detailed papers on that. The project we've done all sorts of immune tests on cheetahs. Okay, because as you mentioned, cheetahs are low genetic pool, so this makes them prone to be vulnerable against diseases that could wipe the whole population. And what we found out, actually, cheetahs compensate this by having the strong immune system of all the African carnivores. So we got blood samples from all the carnivores we could get in Namibia, like leopard, lion, brown hyena, spotted hyena, wild dog, cheetah, caracal, and jackal. And we compare the strength of the white cells of these cheetahs to kill diseases. So they inoculated this, their blood with a bacteria, and the cheetahs were able to kill diseases much more than any other carnivores. So they compensate to have this low gene pool by being really, really strong in these immune tests, showing also that cheetahs really, all the cheetahs we capture, and we capture by now more than 200 cheetahs, they are never sick. They're really always good health. And if they've got injuries, like we saw cheetahs with lacerations and cuts from fights, 3 weeks later, you see these like cured, like very well recovered. It is actually very, very impressive, especially if you compare to other animals like jackals and hyenas. You can see them quite sick. Cheetahs are barely ever sick. If the cheetah is sick, it won't last long. So they're doing really, really good for this. And then the second question, the common threats of cheetahs. So we have several. I mean, landscape loss and habitat loss is probably the main one. Okay, we have less and less habitat available to cheetahs, like say fragmentation, so erecting game fences, more traffic on the roads. Farmers killing cheetahs is still the main threat. I think I looked at our data set 2 days ago, and out of 250 cheetahs dead, 64% were killed by farmers. So this is an important threat. Funny enough, 25% of the cheetahs that we found dead were killed by other cheetahs or by leopards. So interspecific killing was quite an important one. And yeah, so human killing cheetahs and livestock, livestock conflict with livestock and habitat loss are the main threats.
Awesome. This will probably be the last question from Dennis Minja again. You might have mentioned in your talk, but I was wondering what was the fixed rate manufacturer and whether these collars had an accelerometer. And lastly, their weights. I think about the weight you mentioned.
Yes. So we use three different types of collars. Okay. So we use first GPS satellite collars. For this, we really focus. They are a bit more expensive, but they are really working better for us. We use Vectronics. Okay, Vectronics costs more or less 300, weights more or less 380 grams, 370 grams. They have accelerometer, indeed, and they have a drop-off. Then we use a follow it. Because they're likely lighter, so I use these follow-it collars mostly for the desert, because cheetahs in the desert are lighter, and they also have drop-off collars and an accelerometer. And the fixed rate, it depends on your research question. So, for example, to find marking trees, you don't need a very high resolution. No, sorry, to find kill sites for cheetahs, I usually use a fixed rate that is between 1 and 2 hours, every hour or every 2 hours, because cheetahs don't spend very long at the kills. And then the other type of collar we use, EOBS collars, the ones that they are remote download, so they don't send data, you have to fly, or you need to have stations when the cheetah passes nearby, you retrieve the data. These are cheaper collars. They've got very good data collection because they don't spend energy sending the data. We use fixed rates so every 15 minutes, and this is really, really great because it really allows us to have a good insight on everything that is happening. They've got also accelerometer, and these ones, they weigh 330 grams. So most of the collars weight between 280 and 380. Yeah.
All right. There's another question from one of those who are attending in person at RISE conference. They're saying, how were you able to tell whether the GPS clusters were associated with feeding and not other activities?
It's not always easy, especially with cheetahs. It's not always easy. You find out in different areas when cheetahs rest. For example, cheetahs used to have a resting peak in the middle of the day. Okay, so let's say from 10 to 3 in the afternoon, they would rest, and then they usually rest at night. But sometimes this rest at night can also be a kill site. So at the beginning, you start visiting almost every single cluster, and then you start identifying by the location. For example, in top of the mountains, in the cheetahs here, you use the top mountains quite often for rest because they're away from the farmers, they're protected, or some areas in the thickets in the middle of the day, you can, okay, this is a resting site. This one, I don't know, I need to visit. So even after visiting, right now I've visited more than 200 kill sites, I still need to go and visit some clusters because I cannot tell exactly what they are. You can have an idea, but you cannot always know 100%. With leopards, it's easier because leopards spend much longer than cheetahs, but cheetahs is not that easy.
All right. So for those who have more questions, I have just shared Ruben's email address in the chat. Feel free to reach out to Ruben for further discussions or just to connect professionally. I would like to thank again Ruben for such a wonderful presentation and also for your willingness to present at our workshop, at our seminar. And we hope one day you'll visit us in Tanzania. Having said
love
that. You're most welcome. So maybe you can just unmute yourself and clap, give hands of clouds, applause to Ruben for his wonderful presentation. Yeah, feel free to to send an email to Ruben. Thank you so much again on behalf of Brumeti Fund. We really thank you for such a wonderful presentation.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for the invitation. It was very nice chatting to you, and yeah, and good luck with all the work you do up there.
All right, thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you so much for all our online participants as well. We are really grateful.